Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
The following broadcast is brought to you by the iGolf Sports Network.
Golf Talk Live is sponsored by the iGolf Sports Network and Golf Tips Magazine. Here's Andrew to tell you more about our sponsors.
iGolf Sports is a live stream broadcast and media production company providing quality programming designed to attract the golfing enthusiast. And Golf Tips, the game's most in-depth instruction magazine, including reviews on the latest equipment, tips from top teaching professionals, all designed to help you improve from tee to green. Welcome to Golf Talk Live with your host, Ted Odorico. Join Ted each week as he speaks with some of the best in golf. This week's special guest will join us a bit later. But first up is another great discussion on Coach's Corner. So let's introduce tonight's Coach's Corner panel.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Season 13 of Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico. We've got a great show for you tonight. We're going to start things off here in just a moment with another great discussion on the Coach's Corner panel. And, of course, I've got two great guys joining me, a couple of good friends, John Decker and Clint Wright. And I'll tell you about both of them in just a moment. And then later will be our travel segment, starting off again with my good friend and co-host and travel expert, Robert Kaufman. And alongside him, joining is our special travel guest, Troy Mills, the head golf professional from the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge Golf Club. He'll be joining us as our special travel guest tonight. And then later on, our featured guest on the show is Barney Adams, the CEO of Breakthrough Golf Technology. He's going to be joining me a little bit later on the broadcast, so hope you stick around for that. Just remember, if you want to catch the broadcast, you can go to the iGolf Sports YouTube channel, or you can go to Spotify and just search Golf Talk Live, and you can see it there as well. If you don't have the ability or you don't have time to watch the video version, it's also available in audio, and you can go to Spreaker.com or basically wherever you listen to podcasts. You can check that out. And you can also go on to our website, Golf Tips Mag. That's golftipsmag.com. And you can also catch the podcast there as well. So lots of great places to tune in and listen to the podcast. But we're going to get started here tonight. Let me introduce the guys on the panel, and we'll get into tonight's Coach's Corner discussion. First up, of course, is Clint Wright. He's a 30-plus year member of the PGA and partner at TGM Golf. TGM, of course, is a big proponent of the R3 approach, which is designed to help golfers of all levels become better players. And Clint has been considered by many to be among one of the best covering the short game, and certainly one of the favorites here on Coach's Corner. Also rounding out the panel is another good friend and favorite here on Coach's Corner is John Decker. He's the Director of Instruction at the Medallion Club in Columbus, Ohio. He's a senior contributing editor and a top 25 instructor with Golf Tips Magazine. 2015, he was the Southern Ohio Teacher of the Year, and he's the author of two books, Golf is My Life, Glorifying God Through the Game, and Fairways to Heaven, One Shot at a Time, which coincidentally is the name of his podcast that he hosts every week. So you have to check out, and he'll give you all the information a little bit later on. And he's also available for public speaking upon request. So he'll give you all the details for that too when we wrap things up here. But guys, welcome to Coach's Corner.
I'm glad to be here, Ted.
Thank you for having us, Ted.
I appreciate it, guys, as always. All right. So I'm going to lead us into this discussion because I think it's an interesting one. Excuse me. We're going to talk about golf instruction in general and the differences from golf instruction today as opposed to versus 30 years ago. So some golf professionals say that golf instruction has shifted largely from what some might consider an opinion-based and rely on feel to a more data-driven and technology-supported approach over the last 30 years. And I think there's a certain amount of truth, and I'm actually going to be doing a post on golftipsmag.com this weekend on this very topic. So this is where I'm pulling a lot of this information from, as the article I'm going to be posting up on our website. So here's some of the differences, and I'm going to start, if you don't mind, John, I'm going to go to you first,
Okay.
just to get things started. So here's some of the key differences. I think there has been now a more emphasis on data and technology. I'll give you just a little bit of then and then also now, just to get things started, and then I'll get your thoughts. So then, meaning back roughly 30 years ago or before, instruction certainly relied heavily on visual observation and subjective analysis. Teachers might use video sparingly, but without sophisticated data analysis tools. Nowadays, modern golf technology is heavily influenced by technology like launch monitors, swing analysis software, motion sensors, and so forth, and even now AI. So this provides, obviously, the instructors with a lot more data. So I want to get your thoughts. First off, do you think that this is an accurate statement, that comparing the two, that it's become a more data-driven and technology-based instruction today? And what are some of the pros and the cons based on that you see based on your own experiences?
Well, first of all, Ted, the assessment you made is correct. I do believe that with AI and with all this technology, it's overwhelming. The pros, I guess, some of the positives is that you can get the data, so you can get the numbers, and I look at any data as a tool. It's a measurable way to look at someone and say, okay, on June 26th. This is where your club head speed is, or this is where your launch angle is, or whatever it is that you're looking at. And then a month later, you can compare it. The problem is for the average person out there, it is overwhelming if you give them too much of that data. And so I, in fact, did a seminar last year for the Southern Ohio PGA, and I talked to the people of the section, and I said, I really want to do a seminar I want to call it Teaching Without Technology. And I want to teach young apprentices how to look at ball flight, look at divot patterns, and learn to teach that way. They already know all the numbers with TrackMan and all that stuff. And they're using it solely. That's the way they teach. Every single shot, they want to give the student numbers. And I said, it's kind of like when if I were to go to a trainer and I was going to lose weight, and let's say I went to the trainer and I said, I want to lose 25 pounds. The trainer would probably measure me, and they put me on the scale and they say, okay, you weigh X amount of pounds. And now here's the program that we're going to do to lose those 25 pounds. They wouldn't have me do 10 push-ups and then put me back on the scale to see if I've lost any weight. So I think when you overdo it with the data, I think that is a huge negative. It's a red flag when I look at instructors. And I think that if you're out there and you're looking for instructors, you want to go to someone that has the technology and uses it, but it needs to be done in small sample sizes, in my opinion, if you're looking to get better, because I've always said the most important number in golf is your score. That's the most important number. I don't care how far you hit it. I don't care what your spin rate is. I care about your score, and that's what matters to me the most.
Yeah, that's the great point. And Clint, I want to get you to chime in on this as well. You've many times on Coach's Corner have talked about really from your standpoint, and I think from most coaches and golf professionals over the years, that really you want to teach people how to become better players because right. And I think as John pointed out, I think this technology is great. I know we've talked about some of the different technologies not in past Coach's Corner, but what do you think? Do you think that maybe it's good to have it as a tool, if you will, to be able to use it, but not relying so heavily, as John pointed out, that we're getting away from sort of the interpersonal relationships that are developed from between coach and their players? So give me your thoughts, as opposed to, because we've all been around for at least 30 or more years in this business.
30 years
right.
ain't a long part. 30 years is not far enough back, Ted.
Right.
Maybe 40.
I thought about going back. Yeah, I thought about going back further, but I thought 30 years would put it right about a good number. But
no, you did fine. Sure.
When you look at where it was then and where it is now.
The most simplest thing I can say is amen to everything John just got through saying. I really can't say it a whole lot better than how he expressed it, because I use a TrackMan a lot and other things that I do. And it's amazing to me that people will come and ask, what should the numbers be? They've got this idea in their head that there's some magical spin rate or club head speed or angle of attack, this magical thing that they need to obtain. And John hit it quite well. The data needs to be used to determine what you do. What happens when your ball flight, is what you're looking to have happen. In my opinion, I want the data that says, okay, this is really a good result. What did that swing feel like to you? I want a person to be able to feel their golf swing. They're not going to go out and be able to repeat those numbers on the golf course. Okay. They
Right.
can't get the feedback. The feedback they're going to get is what their body felt going through. And so therefore, if I can use the data to help them and to identify what the feel of their swing is to be when it's acceptable results on the ball flight, then they can maybe repeat that, because you can't repeat something you're not aware of.
Right.
So I try to use the technology when I'm giving lessons now, which is not as much as I used to, but it's one of those things. Okay, I can identify using it. John and I and you, probably some of the older guys, can identify it without the technology, because
Yeah.
we know what the ball flight laws are, and we know what divot
Right.
patterns look like. We know what the trajectory of the balls look like. That's how we were taught. I go back to where the technology we had was a sequence camera. That
Right.
was the best thing you had going. And then we got to be big time and got a video. So those are the things that I could amen to what John said, but in reality, they need to use the data to determine the feel of their swing when the results are acceptable. That way they can maybe try to repeat the feel, not the numbers.
I look at it this way, is I think that the technology, I mean, obviously it's in every industry. Technology is moving faster, and especially, with AI, it's moving at such a pace now in every industry, and, golf is no exception. I guess my only real concern is that if that is the only thing that you're using to teach, in other words, if you're heavily into technology and that's all you're teaching, and you're not learning and understanding the basic fundamentals, it's kind of like, I know this is a very simplistic term, but it's kind of like in school. I can remember back in earlier grades where, we didn't have calculators. We were not allowed to use calculators. Now, I mean, it's standard equipment, and now they don't even have that. They just pop it in their computer and, everything's done. So, it's a great tool to have, but if you're not learning how to add and subtract and do all these other things, then you run into a situation where you're not really understanding the golf swing per se. You're just sort of basing it off the numbers. And I mean, I've seen this firsthand where, coaches will be looking down at a monitor and not even paying attention to their student on the range, and or in the simulator or what have you. And, it's good to get those numbers, but you need to be interacting with your student as well. So I just wanted to, touch on that a little bit. And you guys, again, gave some great answers, and I think you're right on. I think there's a balance. And, we've talked about that. Clint, I'm going to start off with you. So take a deep breath. I'm going to come back at you with this one here. And there certainly has been a focus here in recent years. And I'm going to give you the sort of the pluses and the minuses for both. Focus on biomechanics and the science. So back then, traditionally, methods often focused on replicating the swings of more successful players, meaning, a lot of coaches maybe would look at, Jack Nicklaus, or they would, whatever player was prominent at that time, and say, let's look at some of the techniques and some of the things that he or she are doing, and let's see if we can replicate that. That tended to be a little bit more of a focus at that time. Now you're seeing the biomechanics plays a much larger role, analyzing movement patterns to improve performance and reduce, obviously, injury to risk. And it obviously gives you an understanding of how different body parts contribute to the swing. So there's a much deeper dive on how the golf swing actually works with the biomechanics and the science. What are the pluses and minuses here, do you think? I mean, again, it's good to have that knowledge, but is it really, for the average golfer, is it something that they really need to know? And is the coach spending a lot of time learning about this stuff when really it may not be all that necessary? I mean, it's good to have an understanding of how the swing works, and you should know that if you're teaching. But do we really need to get into the biomechanics and the sciences behind the golf swing? Some people might enjoy that, but for the average golf pro, is that something they really need to have?
Oh, absolutely. I look at it not to understand the biomechanics of a golf swing. I look at it more of a person understanding how their body works. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you can look and for years and years, as far back as you want to go, and there's some basic fundamentals amongst golf swings. But then if you look at the movement, the players are playing based on what their body can achieve, not what mine can or yours or John's, anybody else's. That's why they all look different. I mean, if all of our bodies work the same way, we'd look like robots out there. It would look like Iron Byron doing the same thing every time. So I try to get a person to understand their body lines, how their elbows work, how their knees work. You know, the one that we come to a lot, I see it every day, and John probably does too, and you have as well, where the players are not releasing their right side through the ball. And so therefore their knee and their ankle work like jacks. It just lifts them right up off the ball. There's nothing they can do about it. It's the way their body works. So the more understanding I have and can relate to the student of how the angles of your body works, it makes their golf swing simpler, not
Right.
more difficult, not complicated. So if you understand the body lines, and I think that's why you see these younger players today, they have figured out how to hit it further with their body, not their equipment. I mean, the equipment's slinging it, obviously, but they had figured out how to be in better condition and shape. They're, strong athletes. And so therefore they understand their body mechanics, not necessarily, and they also try to relate the swing mechanics of what makes the ball go, the physics of it, into how their body works. So yeah, I think I try my best. It has to be a simplistic approach because I don't really know, that big on kinesiology as well, but I understand basically how it works. And so if we can relate that to our students, and to be honest with you, a good player can kind of get around it. The average player needs to use all the simplistic moves that they can in order to not have to practice and hit balls all day. They want to be able to hit an acceptable shot the simplest way, not the hardest way. So the better they understand how their body lines work, I think the more you can work inside of that with the mechanics that we all know that are fundamental to making good contact with a golf ball.
Fair point. I think I would agree with what you said. I think it's, I guess, John, what I'm getting at is I think obviously what Clint just said makes a lot of sense from the perspective as coaches. We certainly need to understand how our students' body performs and works, and because they're all different, of course. I guess my concern, much like we talked about with the equipment, is if they're doing too deep of a dive into the sciences, into the biomechanics, that it then becomes not so much a natural approach, and it's becoming more of I feel maybe a more rigid approach. What do you think? What do you think on what Clint was saying, and what do you think in general from the biomechanics perspective? Do you agree with that, or do you see it differently?
The majority of people that I work with, unless it's someone that's playing collegiately or wanting to play on the PGA Tour, the majority of people I work with have no clue how the body's supposed to work in biomechanics in the golf swing. And they're there for my knowledge of how to hold the club and how what club to use in this situation and how to hit a bunker shot. They're not coming to me asking a lot of biomechanical information. Now, I give them a lot of biomechanical information, but I do it in a very simple way. And I look at the way the human body's built, and you have two ball and socket joints in your hips. And so you really play golf on one leg. You set up and you've got your weight evenly distributed. Let's say you're on a level lie. And when you go back, you turn into that back hip. So you're on one leg. And then when you come through, you turn into that left hip. And there's a little transition, but you're basically going into one hip and going into the other hip and learning how to turn and get your body to turn around the right hip and turn around the left hip. Obviously is when I talk about biomechanics, that's one that I talk a lot about. I also talk about how the wrists move in the golf swing. The wrists are a hinge. So if I'm holding the club, my wrist is moving back and forth. I do not roll my wrist. And when I hear people, and that's old school, when I was a kid, I was taught to roll your wrist. Well, you're not rolling your wrist, you're rolling your forearms. It's physically impossible. If I hold your forearms, you can't roll them. So you're not rolling your hands, you're rolling your forearms in those situations. And that was involving a lot of manipulation. That was back when the golf balls were balata and the guys were spinning it more. And I mean, I was taught to play a big slinging hook, and that's, a lot of knee drive and all that stuff. Terrible for your body. I mean, it's terrible to slide your knees and finish in a reverse C and roll your wrist. You can do it when you're 14, but when you're 58, good luck. And so the players now they have golf swings, and these guys, there was no Champions Tour when I was a kid. I talked to Jerry Pate. I did a clinic with him years ago, and he told me that he said when I was 35, I was physically done. My body, I'd hit so many golf balls, and I had such a reverse C. And he said I had so many shoulder issues, and so he said I went to Jimmy Ballard, and he said that changed he changed me to more of using my body and using more rotation and using more of my hips, because your hips are weight-bearing joints. They are designed to support weight. Your knees are not weight-bearing joints. Your knees are not designed it. So if you're sliding your knees like I used to do, and I still do, when I get under pressure, those old instincts that I learned, they always say that the things that you learn between 8 and 12, you'll have the rest of your life. Well, unfortunately, I learned a knee drive when I was, about 10 years of age. So these are things that I try to explain to my students, and I do it in a way that's very simple. And a lot of times it's relating to, if you're going to throw a baseball, how would you throw a ball? Or I'm always asking them what sport they play. And then I try to relate it to what they're doing. And there's some, like lacrosse, when they tell me lacrosse, I go, oh my gosh, I know I'm in for a long lesson, because I'm going to have to try to basically reteach them everything they've learned. Lacrosse and golf don't mix. Hockey is another one. I play a lot of hockey. That's, I said, we're not trying to trap it. And, I've never played hockey before in my life, but Ted, you would probably relate to that. But
blame the Canadians for that.
Exactly. So, it's always trying to relate things to what they do naturally when they were a kid, whether it was throwing a rock or throwing a baseball or throwing a football. I try to use biomechanics from that standpoint, and I think that's much more relatable for the average person.
Yeah, I agree as well with what you said, and I think that again, it's something that we have to have an understanding. I just think that we have to be careful we don't get too far in the weeds about it, because again, it becomes to a point where again, just as we've pointed out many times with the technology, if you get too far deep in the technology, then it gets to a point where they're not learning the game. They're just learning how to manipulate the numbers and get the numbers that they want. And, then they're not really having fun anymore. So we have to be careful. So there's a good balance. So it's interesting to see the differences of, what we were learning, 30 years ago to compare to, and this next one, John, I'm going to jump back to you here to start things off. And, Clint talked about this as well, sort of moving away from that one size fits all method. Back then, a lot of instructors subscribed to maybe specific methods. Some of the best guys out there, Ledbetter, McLean, and all that had their different methods, or certain swing models that they identified with because they thought it was, how we should be teaching. And nowadays, while there's still some schools of thought, there's a greater emphasis on individual instruction, which, I think we're looking at the individual bodies now based on the data that we're getting and personal needs. So the goals today is to really optimize a golfer's existing swing rather than forcing them into a rigid mold, of a tour pro or something like that. So has that been a good thing, do you think, moving away from those sort of, as you put it, tried and true methods where, we had the X factor with McLean, we had the A swing with Ledbetter, and Harmon had, I can't remember off the top of my head, but he had a method as well. And not saying they were bad, but everybody sort of was getting pigeonholed into the same thing. Is it a good thing that we've transitioned into a more, let's get away from the one size fits all to let's see what works best for you?
Yeah, I think what I've seen is, I've been teaching the game for a little over 30 years now. So I've seen the trends and over the years, and I think every teacher out there has some sort of system. what always amazes me is when these guys come up and they try to market it in a way that's, well, I've reinvented the wheel, and they come up with this, it used to be the stack and tilt and all these different ways of teaching, which I believe in just basic, good, sound fundamentals. And I think, to me, it starts with the grip. And I will look at the first thing I look at with any player. I don't care whether they are a tour player or whether they are a beginner, is their grip. Because even great players' grip will get off at times. And Nicklaus would always start with his grip every year, and he was the number one player in the world and won more majors than anyone else. And if he's got to work on his grip, then, I need to work on my grip too. Ball position, all of those things, to me, if I get someone's grip, their ball position, distance from the ball, knee flight, if I get weight distribution, there's about 15 or 20 things in their setup that I look at. If I get all those things right, the student is going to make a pretty good golf swing. If you don't have those things right, then the compensations start coming in, and then you better be a really good athlete. You better practice a lot, and you better have great hand-eye coordination, and you better, by the way, be a really good putter, or you're not going to reach your highest potential. So I don't believe that there is one system out there that's best. I think the best teachers in the world, and I got this from watching Phil Rogers teach many lessons. I've watched him teach Raymond Floyd. I watched him teach Paul Azinger. And the one thing that he did is he worked with what that player had. He didn't try to change Paul Azinger's grip. All he did was focused on his release. He kept saying, I want you to go knuckles to the sky, knuckles to the sky. He has a very strong grip, so he would work on, making sure that that wrist didn't roll over and that ball wasn't going left, because Azinger, guys with strong grips, want to play a cut. And so when you watch that and you say that's the way you would teach him, but then you watch someone like Raymond Floyd and you watch the way you teach Raymond Floyd, those are two completely opposite golf swings. But what he did was he would take what they had and he would work with it. And I think that's what really great teachers have the ability to do. They can find the root cause, and it all goes back to the setup. I think Clint would agree with that. It's not something that's going on at the top of your swing. I hear people talk about dropping it in the slot and all these things. These are just terms that are ways to describe the golf swing. It all goes back to those core fundamentals. If you get those right, I think the average listener out there is going to play at their best game that they're capable of doing.
Yeah, it's some great points, and I like the fact you threw Nicklaus in there, because he said that every year when he came out to get ready for a new season, he worked on the fundamentals. That was the number one thing he worked before he got out, and because he was gearing up for the the Masters was the main first event that he was had his eyes on, and he knew that back when they weren't playing all year long like they are now, they would have sort of an off season. Well, they don't really have that now, but back then, he might not play as much golf in that off season because he was spending more time with his family and business dealings and things. So, that was big for him. Clint, what your thoughts? I'm sure you agree with a lot of what John said, but anything you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, I agree with John. I've always had the attitude, and I think John's absolutely correct, is that you don't want to compromise for something you can control. We can control our setup. We're standing there. We've got all the time in the world. There's no time clocks or anything. You can get that right. If you don't get it right, he's absolutely correct. It's a guaranteed force of compromise somewhere. You got to recover. So the setup fundamentals are basic, and you have to pay attention to those things. Now, the other side of it is the science of hitting a golf ball has never changed. It's the same science. The ball's round, the club face is reasonably flat. So those fundamental things from a physics standpoint to make the ball go forward in the direction you want it to, those things haven't changed. So you have to keep those in mind. But on the other hand, we're all unique. Is what we spoke about earlier. Everybody's swing looks different. That's the uniqueness about the game. We can all achieve the science portion, the physics of it to move the ball forward, but have a dramatically different look. So that uniqueness is what I think John was speaking of, is that they found the uniqueness in every player and help them take advantage of their uniqueness to maintain the fundamentals and the physics of moving the ball forward. So I have never, ever thought that there was a method. I've always considered it an approach. What's my approach going to be with this student? What
Mhm.
are they doing that we can take advantage of and the things that we can't? So I look at it as an approach. There's a uniqueness involved, and and I hesitate to say this. I'm going to. If you talk to and you're interviewing instructors and they have a method, run. Just
Yeah.
just go somewhere else because they're going to try to teach you how they think everybody should play.
Yeah.
Okay. So I like the idea of the approach for each individual student. We have basic fundamentals we have to agree on, but then we're going to find your uniqueness and how you can achieve those things. That's the whole purpose of a golf lesson. Not to
Yeah.
jam you down in a little cookie cutter, but to figure out how you can do it.
Yeah. I'm always I agree 100% with both of you. I mean, I think that because you have to look at each player individually and work with what they have. And I've seen too many times where somebody will come in and to an instructor and they'll change everything. And some things may be working fine for that person. It may not be some of the things that they're looking at. And I've seen them come in and literally dissect the person's golf swing, make every change possible to the point where now the person's completely uncomfortable. They don't feel natural in what they're doing, and they become frustrated because they're not able to grasp that, there's too many changes, number one. And I'm always skeptical. John pointed out, when people are teaching to methods, and you touched on that as well. I always found it very interesting, and I'm not going to name names, but there's some top instructors where I've seen them come out with a method or what have you, and then about 6 months or a year later, they're pushing something else, and it's a lot of the same stuff, but it's wrapped under a different packaging. Let's be honest, it's marketing, and it's done really the industry a disservice in a lot of ways. It's made them a lot of money, but at the same time, it's done the industry a disservice because what it does now is it because of the popularity of some of them, it's put golf instruction in some ways back on its heels for a while, because now it's like, well, how do you do this, or do you teach this method, or what have you? And so it caused people to really have to either conform or have to do something completely different. So it was a juggling act for a few years. But I think now the student is coming and saying, I really want to learn to play. I want to do this. I don't want to, I don't want to be taught like my wife over here or my son is. I've got my own game. People are becoming more savvy about their game, and that has helped a lot to push it into sort of not this one size fits all. Clint, I'm going to get you on this one here, and then we're ready to wrap up with this final one here. And I think one of the things that has come out of the differences in the decades is an increased accessibility to information. Back then, we were somewhat limited to golf instruction, meaning that 30 or 40 years ago, let's say, a lot of the big clubs and that had golf instructors available. You didn't have as many or as much accessibility to golf instruction unless you were a member of a club or you knew somebody that could relate. Now there's so many online platforms, and AI, of course, is coming out, and apps and things that you can get a lot of your information, some of it good, some of it bad. So there is, would you agree that we have a lot more accessibility to golf instruction in today's market than what we did? And I'm not just talking about the numbers of instructors or things like that, but I'm just saying the accessibility for the student is much greater now with what's available out there than maybe what there was 30 years ago. What do you think?
Oh, there's no question about that. I mean, we got all the information and knowledge in the world in your pocket and a phone. I mean, so you can reach out and pretty much decide how you want to learn, and you'll find it. You just have to look at it a little bit. From the standpoint of me as an instructor, and probably John, it's kind of a cool thing that we also have the ability for a student we're working with to videotape themselves in between sessions to where we don't fall back. We can get some information to them on a daily basis if they want it. And video lessons and stuff. Early on, people were a little negative towards the video lessons, but to be honest with you, once you start learning how to use it, it's a wonderful tool to help the student progress over a period of time. It used to be you'd see a student maybe every 2 weeks. Now with the technology and the information you got, you can touch them every day if they want to, if they're going to work at their game that hard. And so, no, absolutely, we have accessibility. I mean, YouTube. I mean, you can find any little gimmick you want to, and who you want to follow. You know, you got to get your There's a, I don't want to call it groupies, but everybody's got their own little thing that they follow. You know, so it's okay. I mean, I think it's wonderful. The more accessible that we have to our sport, and to be able to learn how to maybe play it well or to understand it, is a bonus. There's no question about it. So I think that's a positive thing. It's just like some of these teachers now in the studios and the simulators, and they're out there. I actually saw a gentleman today that had been to one of those facilities, and I had seen him a year earlier. And I told him, you need to go back and pay him some more money, because they did a marvelous job with this person, bringing them along over about a year versus a couple of weeks, to be a much better player. And you could see him smiling. He was having a good time. So absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I think
accessible.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, obviously, you have to be careful, and you have to be a conscientious consumer, that you're not, gobbling up everything that's out there,
right,
and that you're staying, whether it's with an instructor or whatnot, because, we've talked about this before. John, the other thing that I want to sort of spin off of this is I mentioned it briefly a couple times throughout the night, but AI. This is one thing that some instructors are fearing out there, that eventually it's Alexa's going to be doing the golf lesson, and Decker, Wright, and Odorico are going to be left out in the dust, because they're able to access and pull out so much information. Is that a concern, do you think? Not just with golf, but I mean, obviously with a lot of industries, but particularly with golf, do you see that maybe as a potential negative? I mean, it's good to have the technology and have access to more information, but at the same time, are we going to be putting ourselves out of a job?
Well, I think by the time it gets to the point where it could put me out of a job, I'll be fully retired. But
yes,
it would, for the younger instructors that are coming up, who are just now coming maybe into the PGA of America, it's definitely something that they're going to have to watch. I believe as long as human beings are playing this game, if it turns into robots playing the game, then that's different. But as long as human beings are playing the game, you need to have that person, because that interaction, so that when someone hits a poor shot or gets upset, you can say, you can encourage them, you can support them. We're human beings. I mean, I hope the day never comes where a robot or some computer is giving people lessons. And if that's the case, I don't know if I would want to play the game. I just think that ultimately golf is your greatest opponent is not the golf course, it's yourself. It's being able to control your emotions, being able to make decisions, how is a computer going to know that if I hit a shot, and as I hit the shot, the wind picked up 5 miles an hour in my face and my ball came up short? How is the computer going to know that? I just don't think that. I hope it doesn't ever turn to that, and it might, and with technology. But to me, then what would be the fun of playing the game? It is a game of human beings out there on the course playing. And like when I hear people say to me, well, I play video games and, video golf, does that count? I was like, no, it doesn't count, because that's not going to translate, when they come to take their first lesson. I've had that comment from kids. I'll get that all the time.
Yeah.
And I'll say, no, what you're getting ready to experience has nothing to do with what the Tiger Woods game that you were playing on your television. So I pray that never happens. I think technology is beneficial. Like Clint said, you can pull your phone out. I call it the Google Net. You can get on the Google Net and you can find out anything you need to know about how to repair something around the house or how to fix this or that. But golf is a very unique game. There's no perfection. Bowling, you have 300. You can't do that in golf. It's just unique, and it needs to be taught by human beings. It needs to be played by human beings. That's my feeling on it.
I couldn't agree more. I don't want to see the fun come out of it. I think just in summary, modern golf instruction is, I would say is certainly characterized by its reliance on technology and data analysis and a more scientific understanding of the swing, leading to more personalized and effective coaching, maybe compared to 30 years ago. Some feel that way. I think that human connection, I think, is important, and I think that there's definitely some pros and cons to both. And I think if we can find a way to sort of marry the two together, I think people will be in a better state. But I agree with you. I think if we get too much down that rabbit hole where technology now comes in and sort of takes over, it might be able to do things faster. It might be able to do things, and there's certainly some benefits here. But at the same time, we have to have that interaction, I think. Otherwise,
and Ted, can I say one last thing with that? With AI, if it were to get to it would be based on the person who put the information in.
Yeah.
That's what's scary about it. Yeah. It's whoever's putting the information in. That's what they're going to say. So it's this person's. Now you talk about a methodology. Now that would be a methodology.
Yeah, and it may not be an individual. It could be an organization.
Exactly.
An organization could come up and say, okay, we want to format, or we want to make everybody the same standard, like a standardization.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is, again, it's the reason you have so many different golf professionals, even though there might be some core similarities between everybody, we all do things a little bit differently. Yeah. And that's what makes us each unique. And if there's sort of a standard run-of-the-mill package out there that everybody's teaching to sort of, again, it becomes one method or one idea, and that's not always a good thing. And history has proven that. So some great points. But interesting discussion. Something we haven't had here on the show before, getting into a little bit of some of the areas we haven't really touched too much about. But you guys did a great job as always. And Clint, if you want to let the folks know how they can reach you, and then John, I'll let you do that. And if there's anything either one of you want to.
Absolutely. Yeah, this discussion has been quite unique in itself, so that is good. They can always reach out to me at clintgolf001@yahoo.com. I'll respond back to them as quickly as possible. And John, it's good seeing you again. And great show, Ted. Thank you.
Appreciate it. And John, go ahead.
Clint, I enjoyed it as always. I always learn something every time I'm on with you. And Ted, thanks for having me on the show. For those of you who are interested in reaching out to me, you can go to my website, deckergolf.com. I've got information there about instruction. So if you're looking for instruction, you can find it there. Also, I have my books are on there as well, if you're interested in that, and my Bible study. I'm excited now. I've got 16 churches and groups that are participating in my Bible study, as well as my video library. I'm also available on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And as you mentioned earlier, I now have a show. It's called Fairways to Heaven, or the Fairways to Heaven show on Bull Brave TV, and it's on 9 a.m. on Wednesday mornings. But if you can't listen to it or watch it, you can go to YouTube. My channel there is John Decker Golf Instruction. If you go to there, all of my shows are on there. 17 shows now, so they're on there. So, but Ted, thanks again for having us on, and look forward to being on again next month.
I appreciate it. Always bringing your best. I appreciate you guys, and thank you for taking time out of your busy days to join me here in the Coach's Corner panel here on Golf Talk Live. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when I come back, I'll be joined by tonight's special travel guest. Welcome back, everybody, and it's time now once again to get into our travel segment. And I'm joined, of course, by my good friend, co-host, and travel expert, Robert Kaufman, and alongside, of course, Troy Mills, the head golf professional at Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge Golf Club. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of them. And then I'm going to hand the mic over to my good friend Robert, and he's got some great questions for Troy tonight. So Robert, of course, is an award-winning photographer, golf and travel writer, golf media consultant. He's worked with a number of great publications such as Troon Golf and Travel Magazine, PGA Magazine, and of course Golf Tips Magazine, along with a host of others. If you want to see more of his great work, you can visit his website, pictureperfect.com. As I mentioned, our special travel guest tonight is the head golf professional at the iconic Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge Golf Club. It's one of Stanley Thomas's most celebrated designs and a fixture on Canada's top course rankings. PGA Canada member since 2006 and a graduate of Humber College's professional golf management program. Troy brings more than 30 years of experience to the game, including roles at St. George's, Angus Glen, and Bayview golf clubs in Ontario. So, guys, Robert and Troy, welcome to Golf Talk Live.
Great. Thank you, Ted. Troy, great to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you, gentlemen, and thank you very much for having me on this evening. Privilege to be here.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. I didn't know I was having a fellow Canadian joining me on the show here.
Uh-oh.
we may have to.
Valley.
What's that?
I'm the middleman.
Yeah, you're the middleman. Sandwich between two Canadians, and so I'm gonna hand it over. As I said, I'm gonna hand it over to Robert. Robert's got some questions for you to talk about what you do and all that good stuff, and in our travel segment, and then he'll invite me back on. So I'm gonna disappear. Troy, again, welcome and thanks for joining us, and I'll talk to you in a few moments.
Thank you, Ted.
All right, awesome. Appreciate it.
Well, Troy, great. This is it's a pretty exciting time right now, I would imagine, for you guys, considering where you were last year, last July.
Very exciting, and words can't begin to describe how elated we are to finally reopen here on Tuesday next week, Canada Day.
Yeah,
it's going to be very special for so many different people that have worked feverishly since we got back out here in September. So everyone in our local community and province of Alberta and across the world. So super excited to get things going. 8 a.m. On Canada Day.
8 a.m. That first tee time's already booked, huh?
Absolutely. We have, a little surprise set up for the day. Definitely going to honor some of the incredible people that, really did everything in their powers to save this historic golf course. So we're going to commemorate them and congratulate them. A special moment for some of our firefighters within the community, and really looking forward to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I want to get into that with you a little bit more. But let's first talk, just to kind of put this in the back right off the gate. Let's talk about, the wildfires, obviously, all the destruction. And I mean, what's been done in the last year, as far as the resilience, survival, bringing the course back to where it is today and where it was prior to the wildfires?
No, absolutely. And it all started in, first part of September is when we had the ability to get back on property. And Glenn Griffiths, our head superintendent, led a team of about 9 or 10 colleagues here that just dedicated the rest of the season until the ground froze and the snow hit the ground to save everything we could. And that was slowly kind of mowing grass down to a level that would be typical for going into the winter months in hibernation. Not so much of cleanup back in September, but more of just making sure we could save as much as we did. And without their efforts, they wouldn't have been able to do what they've done. Winter came out of the winter quite nicely. And since about mid-March, it has been, full recovery and revitalization and getting things ready. Everything from, tree removal. We have a particular amount of areas that we're able to, take down some trees that are deemed, particularly in the golfer's way, not being safe. So really great work there and preparing that and just everything in preparation, replacing hole signs. We had to replace a few greens that were damaged, by the wildfire. They were set in early May, so they're in phenomenal shape as we get to open here in July 1st. We brought out an incredible and well-known golf architect, Mr. Ian Andrew, who is a huge Stanley Thompson expert on all of his work and really kind of set us on a path for success for the next 100 years. We had to reshape a a few new holes and green sites after the fire, and they just came out spectacular. I can't wait to showcase to all the golfers that are going to come play this summer. But I could talk for a few hours on all the work that was getting done, Robert, out here to get where we are today, and I'm just super proud of our director of golf, Talon Sweeney, who spearheaded all the projects, worked closely with Glenn Griffiths and Jacob Malfeast and their team, and we're phenomenal tee to green, and I'm so looking forward to getting golfers out here. It is going to have a different landscape for what those we're used to over the last 30, 40, 50 years. But, as we're celebrating our centennial celebrations on July 17th, it's almost like a throwback to, how Stanley Thompson designed back in 1923 when he first started work and opened it in 1925. So it's going to be a very special, very unique season, but it's going to be so rewarding welcoming back golfers and local members of the community to enjoy something they love and bringing back a sense of normalcy in a sense.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up Stanley Thompson because I wanted to touch on that. Obviously, he's an important figure in the Canada golf scene. Obviously, I mean, do you have any estimate how many courses he's done throughout Canada?
I want to say we're pushing, 30 or 40, could be more. I know that he has 5 inside the top 10. I've been privileged the last 20 years of my life to work at 2 of his finest masterpieces. Obviously the Jasper Park Lodge here the last 16 years, and spent 5 seasons at St. George's Golf and Country Club in Etobicoke, west end of Toronto. And I've been spoiled. His golf courses are just phenomenal. To think how he was designing these over 100 years ago, and they're still holding the test of time is just a true testament to, Stanley's work and his vision and how he'd go in, with a notepad and pen or pencil, I should say, and come out a couple days later with a world-renowned golf course set to open. So very, very lucky that we have him as our architect, and he is just phenomenal. And I feel that, others like Alistair McKenzie, when he was out here in 1929, I feel he took a little bit away of what Stanley did here and applied it to some of his golf courses. So we're very special that to have him as a Canadian and one of our greatest golf architects in history. Yeah,
no, it is quite unimaginable when you think about what these guys had to deal with in terms of landscape and routing a golf course back in the 20s, 30s, and without all the technological resources that exist today. It's mind-boggling. Yeah. Working in an environment like that, obviously it's a short season, so there isn't much time. Really
using horses and the plows behind them, a few hundred men. They trained in the soil from Stony Plain, Alberta, so 3 hours east of us. But again, you look at the technology, you say, Robert, that they were using 100 years ago, just using the natural contours of the land. Stanley really did a phenomenal job at mirroring every green site with a different mountain vista. It may be the same mountain on a few holes, but it's a different view. He took a lot of pride in that, took a lot of pride in his bunkering around those green sites and kind of mimicking some of the mountain peaks. So again, the more we talk about it, the more I'm just amazed that this man was doing this 100 years ago. It's just incredible that a lot of these golf courses are, again, 5 inside the top 10. Our sister property, the Banff Springs, another phenomenal facility down there. So, yeah, just incredible.
Yeah, and I was actually up there last September. Me and my wife did a road trip, and we made it to Banff, and we took we took the extra drive to Jasper because she had never been. I'd been there before, but still, you cannot do that Parkfields Highway ride if you're up in that area.
Yeah, it's the greatest highway in the world. It's almost like
I can do that. I can do that every day of the week. It's just gorgeous. But we did get a hands-on look at the devastation up there, and it was pretty disheartening. But I can't wait to come back and see you guys in full bloom. So let's get into the community a little bit. What kind of engagement has been, and what local support from the businesses, and how it's affected the Jasper economy.
Yeah, it's affected everyone in different ways. To be very honest, I also have the privilege, Robert, of being the current president of the Chamber of Commerce here in Jasper, and some businesses lost everything, lost the ability to be open. Other businesses were lucky and came away unscathed, but Jasper is very resilient, and the reason why we're resilient is those members of the community. We will be back bigger, we'll be back stronger. It has been some tough, trying times for a lot of them. I'm not going to hide behind that. And we've been very lucky to have incredible support from, federal, provincial governments, the Canadian Red Cross to really support and be there. I know on behalf of our chamber, the board members, our executive directors, we're doing everything in our powers with that in the forefront and understanding those business needs. And we need visitors to come to Jasper, and they're back in hordes. It's incredible to see, Rocky Mountaineer and our tours coming in on the motor coaches. Obviously, recent announcements from Prime Minister Carney with, free entry into the national parks will certainly bring more, and the support's there. People coming to Jasper is what we need. Obviously, it has a different look, but it's still beautiful. The mountain peaks are just phenomenal. The wildlife is coming back, and it's just really nice to see. But it is going to be a long road for some of those businesses, Robert. And but I know very well that they're going to come back, as I said, bigger and stronger than ever. And we look forward to that in the near future.
Right. It's awesome. Yeah. So let's get on to the reopening. I mean, you've got any special commemorative events, tributes?
A lot of our focus went into making sure that we could reopen here in July 1 and celebrate an historic birthday being 100 years on July 17th. We are going to have, as I alluded earlier, just a lovely ceremony on opening day before we, get balls in the air at 8 a.m. We are going to recognize the incredible efforts, of not only our local fire brigade here in Jasper, but some of the other communities. So we have some time set aside for them to kind of be the first ones off. And, some may not play a full 18, some may just hit a first tee shot, but, we will definitely recognize that. And the way I look at it as well, Robert, we're able to celebrate our 100th birthday this year. Yeah. And we're going to celebrate being open for 100 years all next year. So it's a year and a half long celebration of our centennial. And I think you'll see some more bigger events throughout all of next season. But, we will have this on opening day. We'll recognize our birthday on July 17th. But, a lot of the efforts from Talon and Glenn and the entire team here at the resort, focus went right into reopening the golf course here next Tuesday, sir.
Yeah. You might want to recognize my birthday, too. It's July 17th.
Oh, look at that. Small world. This is great. I certainly will make note of that. Absolutely. If you're able, maybe we should get you out here to Jasper for that. Celebrate your birthday.
Well, that would be a nice treat. I'll talk to the powers that be. Anyway, so as far as the overall guest experience, I mean, people that are going to be playing, throughout your golf season coming up, I mean, what can they expect in terms of anything different than what may have been happening before? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing, obviously, is just going to be the landscape off the fairways, off the tees, off the greens. The mountain vistas are there, but, a lot of the trees, unfortunately were lost. But everyone can still accept that incredible world-class service that, I strongly feel we've come to know for here in Jasper at our golf club. We will be providing everybody with a commemorative tin when they go to tee off, which will have guest tags, divot tools, and a really special tee that, came from the idea of our director of golf. 5 different colors representing, different processes throughout, the fire, the ignition, being extinguished, the recovery and reopening, historic scorecard of how this golf course was opened in 1925, and a lovely commemorative tin. So every golfer will receive that when they come in. We've had some, new additions with our driving range. We have those 2 new holes, 7 and 16, that have a different look, that go back to how Stanley had first designed them back in the 20s. So very excited to showcase that. And as I said, Robert, tee to green, the Turf Care team's just done incredible work out there. And I think the conditions, people can really expect those to be great throughout the entire season. And we're going to get better and better every day. It's just that landscape in the distance. But I think once people get by that, it's very unique and it's very cool to see. It's part of nature. Revitalization, Mother Nature is very resilient as well. And she'll come back. There's already a lot of green within the mountains. You can see some saplings coming up in certain areas. So, but yeah, other than that, Robert, they can expect the same experience that they would have, before the fire, 5, 10, 15 years ago. So really looking forward to seeing them. I know it's a very special place, not only for all of us that are here, but for all those that, may make a once a year trip or once every 5 years. It's going to be very special, and it'll be emotional, I think, for a lot of them as well. It isn't going to be exactly the way they remembered it pre-2024. But it's still beautiful in its own sense with everything there, and just so elated to get everybody back and especially just going out on our 100th birthday.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, it's a miracle in itself that you guys have been able to, do the restoration in the time that you've had since last year and get it to where it is now. I mean, earlier, I think just a little while ago, you mentioned a couple changes on some holes. I mean, beyond that, I mean, can you talk about that? I mean, like what's been done? What holes were they? And
no, absolutely. And again, I can speak a little bit more. It's, we do have a 3-phased approach for, a few seasons to get it on track. Everything from replacing our, 100-year-old irrigation, which, took a big hit throughout the fires, and just trying to keep enough water out there. Obviously we have to rebuild a lot of our permanent structures. We lost our turf care facility. We lost some of our food and beverage stations out there and some of our washrooms. And, we have a lot of great temporary, solutions out there for washrooms and food and beverage stations, shelters. Got to make sure that all of our golfers' safety is up foremost. So, but I'll talk on 7. It's a par 3. We did have a lot of the trees in the back of the green that, unfortunately just kind of toppled down. So when Ian Andrew was out here, obviously being a big Thompson gentleman, he had some blueprints, and we widened the green slightly. We brought it back a little bit and then totally redid the bunkering. So visually, it just looks new. It's open. And, I'm not going to lie. I think it's going to be a tougher par 3 now. Stanley Thompson was known for his par 3s or the teeth of the golf course, but that's an incredible change there on number 7. And then on number 16, for those that have played, Big Doug Fir was green side on the right-hand side. Unfortunately, that was completely uprooted. So that tree was removed, and all that right side is now, reshaped. It's provided with short grass. So it just visually looks way more difficult coming into that green with a large green. You have a nice surround area. So very excited to kind of showcase those 2 changes. And again, Mr. Andrew was pretty influential with some guidance on that moving forward.
Right. So with all the changes in the landscape, I mean, how did that affect the wildlife situation? I mean, have they come back, or have they stayed away? Or
we've been lucky. There's a famous photo. I believe it was taken on the Thursday or Friday after the wildfire came through the golf course, and it was Bear 222 and her 2 cubs that had hunkered down just near the Athabasca River. So they're out. They've been around this year as well. We've seen them. I've had the pleasure of seeing a few black bears out there. The elk are around, mule, white-tailed deer, and then the Columbia ground squirrels as well. So the wildlife is slowly starting to come back. Obviously, with everything that's taken place, the grass is very lush and very rich with nutrients, and you're going to see a lot of them, coming for a snack there. So, and again, we work very closely with Parks Canada on wildlife mitigation, and I hope people do get to see these wildlife encounters from a very safe distance. But,
Yeah.
the wildlife is coming back, and it is there, which is really, really nice to see.
That's good to hear. Yeah. Of course, you're always on alert, right?
Pardon me, Robert?
You're always on alert.
Exactly.
I
Yeah,
mean,
unfortunately, 100 years, there's never been an issue with wildlife, and I don't think we're going to start this season. They respect us just as much as we respect them.
Yeah.
So it's that two-way street. And again, a lot of people do come. It's in our logo. If you can see my shirt, we have the bears in our logo. So it is one of the things that our golfers like to see, and we hope they can from a safe distance. And it's just really cool to see Mother Nature and how resilient she can be with all the wildlife. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah. So I just want to let our audience know you guys are operated by Fairmont Hotels. And of course, they're no stranger to luxury properties. What has that association meant for you, professionally, personally, and for the lodge, for Jasper?
Yeah, Fairmont Hotels and Resorts, with Accor Hotels as well. It's one of the world's largest hoteliers. To be quite honest, one of the main reasons I haven't left. It's an incredible company. They really care for their colleagues and development and training, making sure that you're able to provide, that luxury service and hospitality that, people come to expect, when they're saving up for a lifetime to come visit us.
Right.
They've taken care not only very well of myself and my family, but everyone throughout the resort, especially last summer. Our ownership group is just incredible, and I can't say enough great things about the organization, our specific resort, the company. Truly make you feel valued and important in everyone's own little sense. So, just phenomenal. They've been really supportive in allowing us to kind of put this golf course back on a path for success for the next 100 years. And I can tell you wholeheartedly, Robert, that we are off to a great start and look forward to seeing how things are going to progress in the coming years.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a story of resilience, that's for sure. And it's nice you've been able to be there to experience it firsthand. So for first timers, maybe who haven't been there, what's the best way to get to Jasper?
Well, we talked about it earlier. I would definitely, if you're flying in, both Edmonton and Calgary are phenomenal. But Calgary, you have the privilege of taking the Icefields Parkway. That's a 3-hour drive through Bob Ross painting. It's absolutely breathtaking. You got copious amounts of incredible views of the mountains, wildlife, so many different points of interest, spots along the way, waterfalls, canyons. It could theoretically take you 7-8 hours to drive up that parkway, as you know, Robert, if you're making a lot of these stops. But obviously with biasm, you have to say going up the parkway. But we're about 3.5-4 hours from the Edmonton International Airport and about 5 hours from the Calgary airport there. And for those coming in from British Columbia, be about an 8-hour drive from Vancouver, coming through that way. But there's 3 main routes into Jasper. It really kind of depends on where you'd like to go, where you want to visit. We have some great golf courses east, west, and south of us. Obviously, Banff Springs, and you got some great facilities in the Canmore area, and even in Edmonton as well. So really, it's I guess whatever the best deal is on a flight to either one of those cities would work out. But my biased opinion, coming up the Icefields Parkway is just incredible.
Oh yeah, no, I'm with you 100% on that. That to me, that'd be the only way to get there. Yeah. So great. I mean, is there anything else you'd like to?
Yeah, like I said, I'm very, very honored to be on here today and to share the story of our recovery and revitalization efforts of our historic golf course.
Can't wait.
Again, I've been privileged to work here since 2009. A young man coming out from Ontario at 26 to work for a summer, and who knows where the wind was going to take me. To 16 years later to sit as a head golf professional when some incredible professionals over the last 100 years have sat here. It's truly an honor. We are very excited, on behalf of Talon Sweeney, our director of golf, our entire golf operations, the resort, and the entire community is just so very much looking forward to welcoming back our golfers to experience Stanley Thompson's masterpiece. To be a part of that recovery and revitalization, I think is important as well.
Yeah.
And just looking forward to celebrating that centennial season, Robert. Folks can visit our website at jaspermountaingolf.com. We have a couple different pages on everything that's taking place over the next few seasons and our phased approach on getting everything back on track. Yeah. You can book a tee time there as well and kind of peruse the entire website. So truly just excited. It's hard to believe it's less than 5 days when we're going to reopen and I'm not probably going to get much sleep in the next few days with that excitement building. Sure. But we are ready. We are certainly ready to welcome the world back to visit this facility, play some golf, and begin some new memories at the Fairmont Jasper Park Lodge Golf Club.
Well, I guess you got to consider that luck was on your side, that the wildfires happened last year, not during the 100th year.
Again, it's tough to predict those, and I just know that we're forever grateful, for the efforts of our Jasper Fire Brigade, who was very, very instrumental in not only saving our golf course, but the historic Jasper Park Lodge as well, and then the other communities that were able to provide some support. I can honestly say without their efforts, Robert, I likely wouldn't be speaking with you here today, to be very truthful. So absolutely, I'm very, very thankful for them. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to bring Ted back in here, and
sure,
he might
absolutely.
have something he might want to ask. Ted.
No, you did a great job. You asked him everything, and he answered everything just spot on. But again, congratulations on coming up to 100 years. I know being in Florida now, we've had our fair share of, with hurricanes and tornadoes and you name it. So I know exactly what it's like to be in ground zero of a devastation like that. And certainly haven't been in wildfire, so that's something different. But I have
There's no playbook for it, that's for sure.
No. And it's great to see that the wildlife always finds a way to survive, and so do the people. And I have no doubt that the course and the area is going to rebound and be bigger and better than before. So I'm grateful that you guys are coming in with such enthusiasm and eagerness to celebrate. So just if you want to quickly just give the website again for those that want to investigate, maybe make a trip. They may not make it in time for the 100, but they may want to come a little bit later on in the season before it closes up. How can they do that? Where's the website?
Yeah, absolutely. JasperMountainGolf.com. They can peruse that. There's links that'll also take you to, our Fairmont site for the resort as well. But again, as I mentioned earlier, they can kind of peruse everything, what they can expect, and some frequently asked questions and the work that'll be ongoing throughout the next season or two until we get everything kind of rebuilt and back on track. But we're open July 1st. And we'll go all the way through until Thanksgiving Sunday here in Canada. If, Mother Nature cooperates and the snow doesn't stick on the ground. But 100 days to play golf in what's our 100th year here is it's pretty special when you think of that, and kind of funny how that worked out and how it kind of played into our centennial celebrations here, Ted.
I'm just grateful that you are able to celebrate this year. So, Troy, thank you very much for joining us. And
absolutely, thank you for having us.
On Robert, as always, thank you for doing a great job.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'm going to take another quick commercial break, and then I'm going to be joined by my very special guest of the evening as well, Barney Adams from Breakthrough Golf. So thank you guys, and I will be right back.
Improve your putting with the Alignment Ball Marker, a revolutionary new in-game putting alignment tool and ball marker. Its patented design allows you to read your putt and adjust your alignment at the same time by using your putter, which improves your accuracy and makes the process of putting faster. 100% legal according to the USGA, by their definition, permitted under the rules of golf. Winner of Best New Product at the PGA Show and only $9.99 on Amazon. And it's also completely customizable for any golf event or as a promotional giveaway. Order at alignmentballmark.com.
Welcome back, everybody. And it's time now to introduce this evening's featured guest. I'm very excited to have him back on the show, and especially on this new format. Of course, I'm talking about Barney Adams. He's the CEO of Breakthrough Golf Technology, and he was the founder of Adams Golf back in 1988, which, of course, specialized in custom-fitted golf clubs. The company gained national recognition following the groundbreaking success of the Tight-Lies Fairy Woods, which revolutionized the way golfers approach their long game. This innovation propelled Adams Golf to rapid growth and earned Barney the Manufacturing Entrepreneur of the Year award from Ernst & Young. His contributions to the sport were further recognized when he received the Ernie Sabarak Award for the PGA of America for his lifetime impact on the golf industry. And he's led the company as chairman of the board until 2012 when TaylorMade acquired Adams Golf. And here we are, fast forward a few more years, and he's now the CEO of Breakthrough Golf Technology. So, Barney, welcome to Golf Talk Live. I appreciate you coming and joining me.
Thank you.
Let me ask you a real quick question because I think I might have messed that up. Is that how you pronounce Ernie's last name?
Ernst & Young, as far as I know.
No, Ernie Sabarak.
Oh, Ernie Sabarak.
Sabarak. Yeah, I knew it was
so.
Okay, I got it close enough. I apologize if I didn't.
No.
So I want to ask you, first off, just sort of a general golf question. I know there's a lot of things we want to talk about tonight, but you've obviously been around golf for a while now.
A long while.
Well, I'm not going to get into age specific, but you've been around the industry for a long time. Did you ever imagine seeing some of the changes in golf that we're seeing now, particularly with equipment? Obviously, I'm talking about. Obviously, there's a lot of other changes, but with equipment, from what you saw, 20, 30 years ago and beyond to what it is now, did you ever imagine that we would be where we are today?
Well, yes and no. Frankly, let's say the equipment hasn't changed as much as the marketing departments would have you believe it's changed.
Right.
You can, and I've done this, you can find 10, 15-year-old clubs and have people hit them. Same results. That might be a little more consistent and they might be a little bit better here and there, but it's not like, a gas engine versus an electric engine, for example.
Sure. Yeah. There's been certainly a lot of changes in the looks of the equipment from what we used to swing many years ago. But you're right. And I've proved exactly what you're saying. I can remember, as being a teacher professional for years, I can remember, students coming up and with a flashy new driver and all excited, but they couldn't hit it. And I said, you had that great driver before. Why'd you get rid of it? Well, I wasn't hitting it as far. And I grabbed that old driver and I'd hit it a mile out there. And I say, well, maybe it's not the driver.
It's the driver.
It's the driver. And it proved exactly what you're talking about is, and again, obviously there's been some changes. I want to, certainly be before upfront here that there has been certainly some changes in technology and that, but ultimately it's how you utilize the equipment.
And the changes, by the way, are let's say skill oriented. In other words, the better players appreciate the changes more than, say, bums like me. Same old stuff.
Yeah. Well, they see the biggest results and differences. I know and just to go to the marketing point you were talking about, I can remember for years, manufacturers talking about, 10, 20, 30 extra yards, which wasn't happening for the average golfer. Now, for the tour pros, they might have seen those gains, but, the average guy wasn't. Talk about, and I'm just going to call them for BGT for short, just to save time, but Breakthrough Golf Technology. You guys obviously have some incredible shaft technology, and obviously you're competing against so many other competitors out there. What makes your product different? What is it different with your shafts than what a lot of the stuff out in the market? Because there's a lot of good stuff out there, but you guys have got some incredible stuff. Yeah,
our philosophy starts with the golfer. Doesn't start with the product. It starts with the golfer. Right. I'm an old range rat. That's where I grew up, was on the driving range, custom fitting 30 years ago, and so on and so forth. And it all starts with, okay, if this club is supposed to be good, or this shaft is supposed to be good, or this putter is supposed to be good, let's go to the grass. Let's find out. And if we don't get the kind of results we want, then it's not our product.
Yeah, that's so true. And you really have to try things out. A lot of people, a lot of golfers, that's, I think, one of the number one things. And this is why going to prompt my next question is, and I'm talking about from a general golfer's position, how do they decide which is the right shaft for them? I mean, obviously you have to be fitted and things like that. You have to try things out, but how do they know what they need to be looking for in the first place? Because there's a lot of confusion with golfers out there. They don't know what they really need. And yeah, you can market them to death with stuff, but the truth of the matter is, what do they need to really be looking for? And if you want to give an example of maybe take a handicap range and just say, if you're 25 handicap, these are the things that you should be looking for in your shaft, if you want to use that as an example.
Well, it's all ball flight.
Okay.
I mean, if I go to the range with you, and I mean, it's not much different than my old days when I was a fitter. I go to the range with you and I got a club, and the objective for the club is for you to get the ball up in the air with your swing, which is I've taken into consideration, and you do, it's over. That's it. That's as good as I can do.
Right.
And that's what it's all about. If it's a professional player, then we might be talking about the relative ability to work the ball a little bit, because that's more their game. Or, of course, the infamous cause or the infamous factor is distance. Distance sells golf clubs more than anything else, 5-1. People want to hit it further.
Yeah.
And so the question isn't hitting it further per se. Is it hitting one further and 4 into the trees?
Yeah.
Maybe that's not so good.
Yeah.
Maybe it's hitting one good. Maybe not quite as far, but one good, but the other 4 are in play.
Right.
That's a much better product. It's that kind of stuff.
I want you to talk about, because, again, this is, I'm coming from the industry's standpoint. A lot of people have heard flex point in the shaft. You got your low, high, and medium sort of flex points. Most golfers couldn't tell you what one means from the other. What is the difference, and how does it apply? Is it based on the speed of the swing? How does it decide what flex point is right for what golfer? Or does it matter?
Well, I'm going to give you a kind of an off-the-wall answer. The most successful set of irons in the history of the golf industry were the Ping Eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously their flex point would be applicable, following your statement. Every Ping Eye iron ever made in the history of time had an X shaft in it. What the hell has that got to do with flex point?
Right. True.
Might be in the marketing department.
Yeah, I think that's another one. But you know what? This is the thing that I'm getting at is, you hear them talk about so much of this stuff. And again, I know it's marketing. I mean, I know this and you know this because we're in the business, but for the average Joe out there that goes out and they start talking about this, or they're, questioning it, maybe they're out and doing a demo day or something, and they're hearing all these buzzwords thrown at them, and they don't really understand what it means. And obviously there are going to be some differences, but again, it's at a higher level. The average golfer is not swinging the club fast enough really to benefit from some of the things.
Or consistently enough.
Or consistent enough, of course. That's the other adage. But so it really doesn't matter as much for the average golfer, correct?
No, I don't think so. I used to experiment with this all the time when I was a club fitter, and I'd take a guy that was, a 20 handicap and not very much club speed, and give him a club with a shaft in it. I'd tell him it was a very soft shaft to fit his swing, and I'd be lying. It would have an X in it.
Right.
And he'd hit it and go, hey, that's pretty good, right. And so on.
Like the placebo effect.
So it's all up to the individual. If the feedback to the individual is positive, I don't care what the flex is, to be honest with you. And I don't really. I'm going to tell you how dumb I am. I have a 3-way. It's a new product for us, but we'll skip that. And I really liked it. And then I got to the point where I was having trouble hitting it. I was having trouble up in the air. So I convinced myself that I needed to reshaft it, and I went out and reshafted it. Now, how dumb is that?
Yeah.
But, I'm just another golfer. So I hit it today, and I hit it pretty good. I said, aha, I was right. The shaft makes all the difference until tomorrow.
When it happens again. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and that's, I've done a lot of corporate golf and taught a lot of corporate executives and that. And one of the things that always used to make me laugh was I would see them come out at the beginning of the season. They'd want to get a tune-up, and they'd be walking in with some new equipment. And I can think of one, I won't get into specifics, and he walked in with new equipment, and I, I remember from last season that he was struggling to, break 100.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't want to practice, didn't have time, was too much in the boardroom. And I said, listen, you've got to start getting serious in the game if you want to improve. And he came in with a chunk of equipment that would just cost, and he had money. I mean, it wasn't an issue of money, and I said to him quite bluntly, I said, listen, I'm looking, just doing a quick tally, you're looking at about $3,000 worth of equipment, including the bag. I said, for a third of that, I could have gotten you just as good of equipment, probably less than that.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you could have taken the other $2,000 and bought your wife another piece of jewelry.
Right.
And twice as happy as with that news. Because I said, what's the point? And again, I know he had the money, but the point was that he was not able to get out there and really capitalize on that. And I just see that all the time. I mean, you see it go down to the PGA show. And again, I'm not trying to, slam the industry, but you see that every year, and they're coming out and the drivers are getting more expensive and this is getting more expensive. And the average person can't hit it.
I just came from, I won't mention their name, but one of the new custom fitting centers, because they do some reshafting for me and so on. And I heard him tell the guy that, look, you want to get you told me you want to get a whole set, woods, irons, bag, the whole deal. It'll be about $8,000 or $9,000. And I'm going, what? But that's the world that we live in. It's almost like the more you paid, and there's a company out there, by the way, that revolves around this. The more you paid, the better they must be.
Yeah, I know.
And by the way, if you want to help those guys, I keep track of weird stuff. At the driving range, I count how long the player X goes to the driving range before he pulls out his driver.
Mm.
He hits about 6 chips. And what he ought to be doing is hitting mostly chips, because he's not going to hit the greens anyway. If he really wants to play better, score better.
Right.
But, they want to hit it further.
Yeah. It's I mean, you're battling uphill against multi-millions of dollars of marketing. And
yeah, it's a marketing business.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately. But all right, so let's get on to your new putter line, Paradox. This is something exciting, very, very different. From what I've seen, and I've seen a lot of stuff on the market. Talk about some of the unique features here. Obviously, it's available in mallet or blade. And what sort of was the thought behind the development of this? And what were some of the features that we can expect to see?
I'd say in one word, torque. But what you want in a putting stroke is you want to return the face to the ball square. If you're a putting instructor and I'm not returning the face to the ball square, you got a problem.
Right.
Because, I'm just not going to be very good. Well, if you look, like, remember the old putters, the Walter Hagens, for example, or the mallet heads of today, they're 3 times heavier.
Yeah.
And the shafts haven't changed that much over the last zillion years. So you've got more weight wanting it during the stroke, which makes the shaft twist a little bit, oscillate a little bit, because they're disproportional. So this system, I won't go into it because it's really complicated, but it's called principal access. But basically what it says is that when you have a bunch of weight at the end of a rod, it's not going to move. Mm-hmm. And you design the shaft. This is what you have to do to make it happen. So the putter is very, very, very consistent. And that's all you can ask for. The best putters in the world don't make half.
Right.
You look at the data, the pros on tour, they don't make 50%. They make maybe 40-something%. So it's a game of misses.
Yeah.
And I always would tell people putting, if you think you will, you will. And if you think you won't, you won't.
Yeah.
This is to give the player that confidence, that solid feel that he thinks he's going to make more.
Yeah, attitude is definitely a lot to do with it for sure, and we see that as instructors. I mean, I see people coming all the time, and I always joke around. It's like going to the airport. I see people, dragging their baggage up to get ready to go on their flight. I see the same thing, at the golf course. And I'm not talking about their golf clubs. I'm just talking about all the emotional baggage from bad rounds, moving from one hole to another. They just had a bad par 3, and they're bringing all of the bad memories and the bad thoughts and the swing thoughts and whatnot, and they're stepping up on the tee, and then they're wondering why they're not, making a good swing because they're thinking about 2 holes ago or the last hole or whatever it is. So
I wrote a story about this that because I was asked, is golf fun? You got to play golf because it's fun. I said, that's baloney. Golf is not fun. Golf is hard. It's very, very, very hard. But as a result, it's also very rewarding. And that's the thing that keeps you coming back. I did another experiment, for a better part of 2 years, because I lived on a golf course and I could get over to the range. What was the best shot you hit last time you played? I always got an answer, and I always got an answer fast. Oh, I hit a 7-iron on number 14. God, it was beautiful, or a tee, whatever. That's the rewarding part, and that's what brings people back to the game.
It's funny. That reminds me of a very interesting story. Jack Nicklaus never talked about his bad shots, never. And
right.
I remember he got almost, I won't say angry, but he got agitated in an interview one time, and he says, "Why are you asking me about that?" He said, I don't remember that shot, or I don't remember that round, or what have you. And, to further prove your point, is he was always focused on what he did right. He wasn't focused on what he did wrong. And if he needed to work on something, he went up to the range and he worked on something, but he didn't sit there and dwell on it. And that's where a lot of golfers fall into that trap.
I'll give you a name that you'll remember, Mo Norman.
Oh yeah.
I used to play golf with Mo.
I played
down in
times.
All right. So you know what he was like.
Oh, I know.
And
exactly.
I'm watching him hit balls one day, and it was ridiculous. So they're almost bouncing off of each other, just one after another. And then he hit one a little heavy. And the guy standing next to me said, "Hey, Mo, a couple shots ago, you hit that one a little bit heavy. What did you think about?" And Mo wheels around and says, "Think about? That's a bad shot. I don't think about bad shots. I only think about good shots." And he wheels back around and starts hitting balls again.
Yeah,
same answer.
Yeah, Mo was an interesting character. I can remember I only played with him a couple times. I actually met him through somebody else, and I remember I was up on a range back up in Canada, and Mo, of course, came over. He was going to be looking for play around with his friend, and the gentleman's name was Nick Westlock.
Oh, yeah, I know Nick.
Yeah, and so Nick and I were there, and we were going to get out. So he said, Mo, do you want to join us? So, of course, he did. Well, I was hitting a few balls on the range, and Nick had said to Mo, he said, Ted's, struggling a little bit here. He said, what advice could you give him? And he said, well, what are you hitting? And I said, I'm hitting my 7-iron. He said, well, and Mo grabbed his, and he went out there, and I said, what am I doing wrong here? What do I need to do? And Mo, without missing a beat, walked up, hit about 3 or 4 7-irons, just like you say, bouncing off of one another.
Yeah.
He turned to me, didn't say, hold the grip it this way. He said, do that. And then he,
Yeah.
I mean, so, and it's true. I mean, obviously, there was more to it, but that's how he looked at it. And that's how I think a lot of golfers, unfortunately. So I want to go back to the putters because I want to give you a good opportunity to really dive into them a little bit more on that. So obviously, I mean, torque is a big thing. What about the design of the putters themselves, the putter head I'm talking about? Was there anything unique about that or different?
Well, they got every mallet head in the world is different than the other ones, and so they look different. Honest answer, I struggled with I prefer the mallet. I'm a mallet putter, and so I preferred that one. So I went in that direction, and I struggled with it at the beginning, and I thought that thing is, I don't know, blah blah blah. But the more I hit it, and the more I realized how consistent I was, then it started looking good. So whether it looks good or looks bad or whatever is really a factor of where the golf ball goes. Because the message coming back to you is, hey, you just hit 6 putts from 15 feet and you're 6 inches from the hole. That's better. That's better than you are. Yeah. So that's how it looks. So we have we have a blade and a mallet, and we have more coming, because it's a beauty of the eyes of the beholder thing. I mean, you've had this happen. Guy will show you his putters and look at this thing, and it's beautiful. You look at it, and go, my God, I wouldn't touch that.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, that's the name of the game.
Yeah, I've demoed a few of them. And let me tell you, I put them back in that sleeve real quick.
Yeah, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, some of them are pretty crazy, but I think what it boils down to. So when you're sitting, in your office or at home, and the wheels are turning upstairs there, and you're thinking,
and always are, unfortunately.
Yeah. Unfortunately, great minds are tough to shut down, and that's both a blessing and a curse, unfortunately, for the individual. But what do you think about, like, when you want to see breakthrough golf be successful?
Mm-hmm.
What is it you're thinking about? I mean, obviously you have to market the products and all that kind of stuff, but we talked.
I tell you exactly the answer, because I just went through this the other day. I want people to know that they can't go wrong using our stuff.
Yeah.
They might prefer something else. That's fine. I understand whatever the reasons are, but they know that if they use our products, they're engineered as well as they could be. They're tested, and they do what we say they would do.
Yeah, and that's
my goal.
Yeah, and that's all you can ask for. I mean, that's really what you want is you want to, whatever product you buy, but particularly from your standpoint, is you want people, when they walk away and they're using your product, whether it's one of the shafts or whether it's the putter or another product, you want them to know that it's not just, well, they say it does that, it does what they say it does.
Yeah.
And that's
a funny story. I think it was about 5 or 6 putters. We sent them out to individuals that test putters and so on to get feedback. They wouldn't return them. He said, "Yeah, and furthermore, it's in the bag, and don't ask."
When their number goes out of service, you know that you're not getting your club. Yeah. And they've moved twice. And that speaks volumes. But obviously everybody wants their company to do well. But I think people that approach this from a development standpoint, that develop their equipment, have a uniqueness, because there's sort of a special bond with that equipment. It's not just here I'm working for this company. You're actually developing the products. You're actually getting your hands dirty, so to speak. And
we're all the same too. Our guys all think the conversations are all similar. It's about, is this better for the golfer? Because if it isn't, don't waste my time.
Yeah. I mean, it looks great and all that kind of stuff, but if it's not going to do what you want it to do, and the golfer is ultimately not going to see value out of it, they might as well just hang that up on the shelf and go and get something else.
Yeah. It's called a wow factor in the old days. Yeah. When I was a custom fitter, I'd give them a call, wow, this really hits good. That was a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
Because that, getting to the heart and soul of the golfer, so they would say, wow, this is good. I'm thinking, that's good. That's where I want to be.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I wanted to ask you this, and as we are moving into a newer age, if you will, a technology age, I think you know where I'm going to go with this one, but is AI going to become, do you think, a game changer? I mean, it already is in some ways. And if so, how do you see that? What role do you think AI is going to play in what you're doing?
Well, and again, that's a recent conversation I had with one of my old friends. All my friends are old, so it's
I hear you. I'm getting there too, so I hear you.
I don't like what I see.
Yeah.
I don't like golf. I just read an article in the local paper. I live in Colorado. The local paper about golf facilities that aren't golf courses. So we've got hitting into screens and nets and so on and so forth. That to me is not golf. I'm not interested in those places. I know they're very accurate, and this is maybe a little of a diversion off of AI, but it's still the high technology approach is what you're talking about.
Right.
Another buddy of mine just got back from 2 weeks of playing the old course in St. Andrews.
Right.
And to me, that's as good as it gets. I mean, that's just old-fashioned walk, great, here it is, and so on and so forth. You can't avoid AI. It's magic. I mean, I can't even begin to understand how it works, but I still prefer the grass of a range and the grass of a golf course.
From a equipment standpoint, though, do you think it will play a role in the development?
Minor. It'll play a bigger role in the ads than it will in the development.
Okay. So from a marketing standpoint, it's going to be
AI design wedges, hit the ball within 5 feet every time, and so on and so forth. You know,
I like it. I love that. You know, I'm the same way. You know, I had an earlier segment on my show tonight, and we were talking. We have a panel discussion, and we were talking about golf instruction from say 30 years ago to what it is today. And of course, you've had an onslaught of technology. And one of the things, and again, you know, I know it has a role and it has a place, but I've found, and now it's starting to move a little bit in a different direction, but one of the concerns I always had was that people, and I'm talking about instructors now, were getting so entrenched in the technology that they were looking at a monitor all the time. They weren't even paying attention to their student. And a lot of students got frustrated. And, you know, it's not like, you know, hey, I'm over here hitting balls. Go ahead, round up another one, go ahead and hit another one. And they're looking at the numbers.
Well, if the ball, the ball's not getting up to its normal height. Well, have you noticed that the guy never gets back over to his left side? That might have something to do with it, and so on.
Right, exactly. And you know, they're just basing it on the numbers, and that's what I worry a little bit about with AI, and that, you know, again, I think there's going to be a place for it, but at the same time, I worry. And that's why I wanted to get your thoughts is, do you see that, and I'm sure some of them are already doing it, where some of the manufacturers are going to get into a very adaptive approach.
Oh, and you're
going to see them where everything is going to be designed, created, you know, manufactured and that, and you're not going to have that sort of personal, you know, input from someone like yourself who has a lot of experience and understands what golfers really want, because the machine doesn't really, it's just basing it on, and something that was mentioned earlier, and I want to get your take on this. I think you'll agree 100% with this too, is who's going to program it? Somebody has to give them the information. And if you have, you know, somebody from, you know, a box store over here that says, okay, we want to standardize the equipment, so we're going to program AI to look at it from these. I mean, you talked about ping earlier. Look what happened with ping some years ago. You know, that could very easily happen with AI. Do you see that as being a concern?
Well,
potential concern.
I think an honest answer is, first off, I think it's over my head, to be very honest with you. My opinion, for what it's worth, is that you're playing with fire, and you better be very, very, very careful. And you just can get so entrenched and so carried away that you forget the damn business that you're in. And so I always say, how's the golf ball doing? Because that's where your answer is. Yeah. I'll tell you, it's sort of similar, but I'll tell you a Mo Norman story. This is a place called the Royal Oak Country Club in Titusville, Florida, which is outside of Orlando. Yeah. It was owned by the Canadian PGA in those days, a long time ago. And my mom lived in the area, so I would go down and I'd stay with her. She was widowed. And then I go to the PGA show, which wasn't very far away. And I go over to Royal, and that's where I met Mo, was at Royal Oak. And as you know, Mo was not an easy guy to meet or talk to.
No.
But I was a hockey fan. And once he found out I was a hockey fan, I was in. That was it. You know, hey, how you doing? You know, so on and so forth. So I'm watching him hit balls. And I'm thinking, you know, for the way this guy hits the golf ball, a standard product is not going to work best for him. So I didn't say anything to him. I went back and made some irons. I think they weren't D5s. I think they were G5s or something. I mean, the heads were really, really heavy.
Yeah.
And I made them and did all the other stuff and so on. And I went back to Mo and I said, give this a whack, will you? And he took them. He put them right. He said, these are great. And that was it. I made his clubs from there on in.
Right.
But they were the clubs for the player. And that's the point I keep making over and over again. You know, it was, oh my gosh, I could tell the difference. I could, you know, he was so strong and so consistent in what he was, as you know, he was freakily strong. Yeah. I mean, there's an old thing that says, I don't know if you know his background.
Yes, I do.
People consider him to be autistic or something like that, but he was not. He was sliding down the hill in a toboggan with his friend, lost track, went out and got run over by a truck.
Yeah.
And he went home that night. He was actually dribbling blood from his nostril, but he went home, you know, and, oh, yeah, you know, blah, blah, blah. So he went to bed, but he was never the same after that. So the argument can be that he had brain damage, but he was never diagnosed formally for it and so on. but he was so physically strong because he loved to pinch it. God, I had black and blue marks all over me when he gave me those damn things. But I thought, okay, then I got to make clubs for him.
Yeah.
Not clubs for clubs, but clubs for him because he's different. And I did.
Yeah, and that's the same. That's, you're seeing more and more now with instruction as well. I mean, and this is one of the things we talked about earlier, is that for years they were sort of doing a cookie cutter approach where everybody was being taught the same, putting in the same mold, the same methods and whatnot. And, finally people realized that, hey, everybody's different, just like you were talking with Mo. And that's so true. And it is with the equipment. What are you most excited about Paradox putters? What's the most exciting thing for you? I mean, obviously you want
square face and impact, the consistency. I mean, that's what putting is. It's about being consistent. If you hit one 2 inches from the hole from 30 feet and you hit the next one 10 feet from the hole at 30 feet, it might be an issue there. So I want to give somebody something that they're consistent with, and that's what I noticed with it. Because I fought it at the beginning. The head just didn't look like I was used to, and I was fighting it. But the consistency of the ball roll kind of got through to me, and now I like it. Now I understand it, and I like it. And I think that's absolutely the key. And because I said before, putting, the best players in the world, I think it was from 4 feet, make like 41% of their putts or something like that. You're not making everything. And anybody that tells you are is just not telling you the truth. They're lying to you.
Yeah.
So I want when the guy reaches for his putter or the lady reaches for her putter, I want her to feel confident. I want her to be glad that she's got it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that from a standpoint too, I think that people want to feel, when it comes to, you touched on short game and that earlier. More strokes are lost around the green, whether it's chipping or what have you. And, as an instructor, one of the most frustrating things is seeing people pulling their driver out in the driving range,
after 3 swings. Yeah.
2 or 3 swings. And I always joke because I always go, when I go up and just, piddle around with my own game when I have a chance, is I go over around the green and the bunkers and stuff. There's nobody there.
It's empty. Yeah, that's right.
So
we have the same situation. We have a lovely practice green in our course. I think I've seen 2 people on it in the last 2 years.
Right, exactly. But yeah, it's just it's amazing. So you said there's more stuff coming down the road under the Paradox line. What's anything you can share, or is this something that you're
putter designs?
Okay.
I mean, because again, it's races for horses. I'm not a big fan of blade putters. So if we made a line of blade putters, guys like me wouldn't be very good customers.
Right.
Conversely, mallet and so on. So you want to have different variations in the blade and mallet categories, and that gives you a broader appeal. Putters are a $3 billion a year business, irrespective of the rest of the clubs in the bag. So they're certainly worth spending time and effort on, and that's what you do.
Would this be an accurate statement? Obviously when golfers get fitted for their clubs, but many golfers don't get fitted for a putter. Would that be accurate? Is that something, if you were speaking with a group of, and I'm sure you've done this many times, a group of, average golfers out there, what would you say to them when it comes to selecting a putter? And I mean, obviously, let's forget your putter for a second, but what would you say?
2 things. Yes, get fitted. Where is the ball to your eyes and your hands? That allows you to be consistent. Okay? And I could go on, blah, blah, blah. However, the 2 best putters I ever saw in my life did everything wrong. Everything wrong. The one guy would aim left of his target and block it, and the other guy would aim right of his target and pull it. So I got to pay attention to who I'm talking to, because that's the nature of the game. They didn't know or care if they were right or wrong. They knew this is what they did to make more putts, and they were great putters. So I've never forgotten that. That's the kind of thing that's really the heart and soul of golf, I think.
Yeah.
It's just like well, this putter is perfect for you, and you have to have the ball here and your hands here and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Don't putt against my friend. He'll own you after a while.
Yeah, I had the pleasure years ago when they used to play the Canadian Open up at Glen Abbey, still in Oakville, Ontario. And I remember after the Open, when they opened it back up to the public, and I met a gentleman who was a veteran and had lost one arm through the services. And we went out and couldn't hit the ball very far. I mean, I launched it past him all the time, but man, he out-putted me on those greens. I joked and I used to call him one putt because that's pretty much what he did on the green. Couldn't go very far.
And you're not designing clubs for him.
No.
You're designing clubs that he can use, but you're not designing clubs for him because the next guy is completely different.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. So, Barney, if people want to get more information, if the audience wants to learn more, or if they want to find out about how to go about getting a fitting for their Paradox putter, where do they go? Do you
online? Okay, that's a BTG Golf. I'm not very good with that stuff. I don't pay much attention.
Website's breakthroughgolftech.com.
Yeah, Breakthrough Golf Technology. Yes, .com. It's a good website. I say that. I mean, what the hell am I going to say? But I thought I read it myself. Right. I thought, hey, this is interesting.
Right. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I hear you. I know exactly. So it's breakthroughgolftech.com is the website. Right. You can go and check it out. There's a lot of great videos on there. It gives you a little bit more in-depth explanation on some of the things that Barney touched on tonight. So obviously you couldn't get too technical on the show, but you can actually see them in the videos, and you can see the equipment there, and obviously all of the other shafts that are available through their company. So you, again, visit breakthroughgolftech.com is the website. And Barney, I want to thank you very much. If you want to hang tight for just a second, I'm going to wrap it up, and then we'll go. I want to, again, thank all of my guests, especially earlier on in the show. I want to thank John Decker and Clint Wright for joining me in the Coach's Corner panel. And then also a special thanks to my travel guests tonight, my good friend and co-host, Robert Kaufman, and also our special travel guest, Troy Mills from Jasper Park Lodge up in Canada. Their golf club is reopening first after the wildfire. So those that you're interested in visiting, go on up in that neck of the woods. And, of course, my very featured guest tonight, Barney Adams from Breakthrough Golf. Thank you very much for joining me. But really appreciate it. And for those of you that want to tune in and watch the show afterwards, if you go to iGolf Sports YouTube channel or on Spotify, and if you want to listen just to the audio version, you can go to Spreaker.com, or basically wherever you listen to podcasts, you can check out this episode here. But on that note, I will see you guys next week right here on Golf Talk Live. God bless everybody and have a great weekend.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this week's broadcast of Golf Talk Live. We'd like to thank this week's Coach's Corner panel, and a special thank you to tonight's guest. Remember to join Ted every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central on Golf Talk Live. And be sure to follow Ted on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you're interested in being a guest on Golf Talk Live, send Ted an email at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.